A hush had settled over the crowd back in that great feast hall. There was tension hanging in the air like an electric charge. Nobody dared speak, but they kept stealing glances back toward the Dwarf King's hooves, his cloven hooves. It was no mystery why the Queen had chosen this particular tale to tell at this particular time, and they wondered, would the dwarf erupt in rage? Or worse, would he leave and steal into their homes and steal away their children? Nobody dared speak. But the Dwarf King stood, clambered up onto the table, and looked around at each of them.
Quite the interesting tale, O Queen. It has a distinct message for us all. Beware of strangers who come in clever disguises. Bravo, Queen! Bravo!
As if letting out a huge sigh of relief, the whole crowd seemed to whoosh. And then there was the murmuring and chattering once again. But the Dwarf King looked at the Queen.
Oh, Queen, your tale was magnificent. Though I lack your beauty and your eloquence, your tale brings one of mind of my own. King, with your leave, I beg to tell it.
And with a nod from King Gelert, he began. Of all the wedding gifts that Prince Llewellyn received on his wedding day, none was more surprising or received with greater joy, and none would bring him later greater pain than the one given to him by King John of England. That wily old monarch came sauntering in after all the festivities. "Oh, boy! Well, you have quite an array of gifts, but I have one final one for you. Come here, dear laddie. Yes, come here." And so Prince Llewellyn walked toward him and watched as that crazy old man reached into his cloak and pulled out a little bundle of fur and stretched it out. "All right, that's not what I think it is. No, is it an Irish wolfhound?" He took it in his hands, held it up, and then smiled as it immediately began licking his neck fondly. And in that moment, a bond was formed between Prince Llewellyn and that lovely hound. I think I'll call him Gelert, after the old saint. "Oh, 1,000 thanks to you." Now, at that age and in that vicinity, only someone of royal birth could receive an Irish wolfhound. It was a badge of honor. And as the two both grew, they were inseparable. That Irish wolfhound, he was big and muscular, and as they went out for the hunt, his keen eyes could look about, spot their prey, and bound quickly afterwards. He quickly made his way to the very front of Prince Llewellyn's pack of hounds, and after the hunt, when they were seated back at the table, he was the only hound at all that was allowed right there next to the master. He would steal juicy pieces of meat and drop them, while his wife looked on in disapproval. "Well, what do you have to say? He's the one who helped us get it. He deserves it." "Well, don't you?" It was such a big hound that when he stood upon his hind legs, he could easily engulf his master in his playful paws. They were inseparable. But something changed with the birth of a son. When the new boy finally came into the great castle, they named him Gruffin and put him tucked away up in the nursery. But strangely, while the hound watched his master, wondering why he had no such fervor in his attention for Gelert the hound, Well, he watched him and then decided he would follow suit. In fact, they found him one day up in the nursery, peering over the edge of the cradle, while pink little fingers reached up and intertwined themselves into his gray fur. When they caught him, Gelert turned with an almost sheepish look. Oh? Oh, they just laughed. But as that child grew, the bond between Gelert and Gruffit, the boy, that also grew. In fact, oftentimes, when the boy became about a year old, where he could stumble about upon his feet, he was often seen in the kitchen, hanging on to Gelert's tail, while Gelert plowed through the kitchen back and forth like he were a sled dog, and the kitchen staff simply laughed and laughed and laughed. Gelert was not always so eager for the hunt after that. He would sometimes growl, wanting to stay with his new little friend, but finally he would obey his master, and off to the hunt they would go. After a year and a half had passed from Gruffit's birth, they found themselves deep in the heart of the forest at their hunting lodge. At last the queen was able to accompany them, and as they made ready to go on the hunt, Prince Llewellyn turned. No, Gelert, I'm sorry, you have to stay here. Watch Gruffit for me. Protect him. We are off on the hunt. He saw the disappointment in his hound's eyes, but told him to go in, watch over him. They left the nursemaid there, told them to keep the door shut, and then off they went. When they finally returned at the end of the day, heavily laden with their prey, they made their way into the clearing of the forest. And as they looked over at the opening to the lodge, Prince Llewellyn felt a prickle at the nape of his neck. The door, which he told them remained shut, was open. He quickly dismounted, made his way inside, looked about, and that prickle turned to a pang of fear. But the table and the chairs now lay overturned in shambles, and the nursemaid lay unconscious on the floor. Gruffit! Gruffit! Panicking, Prince Llewellyn ran all through the lodge. Gruffit! Gruffit! Calling out for his son, but he could find him nowhere, not even in the nursery, where his bed lay overturned. Gruffit! Whimper, and then the padding of paws coming toward him. He turned. There came Gelert, stumbling, his teeth mired in blood and gore. In an instant he saw what must have happened. Slowly, ever so slowly, rage had built up within his faithful hound, that he could not join his master on the hunt like before, and then he'd finally ripped apart the lad. No, you! He brought his sword out of its scabbard and plunged it into the heaving chest. No! Oh. His ears pounded with rage so much that he almost missed the muffled cry. It came from there, in the nursery. He quickly ran in, threw off the overturned bed, found his son lying on the back of a dead wolf, its throat ripped clean and its blood congealing beneath its matted fur. And then it came crashing what really must have happened. The wolf had entered, and Gelert, the faithful hound to the last, had saved his son. He quickly leapt back to that hound, reached down, cupped him gently in his hands, drew him near to his chest, and that hound, faithful to the end, reached up with his tongue, trying to kiss his master.